Hi, welcome to Naptime Nutrition. I'm Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian and owner of Baby Bloom Nutrition and Toddler Test Kitchen. And today with me is the fabulous Maude Perreault from Family and Co Nutrition. And we met on Instagram. She's got a fantastic message that we're going to chat about today. Thank you so much for joining me, Maude.
So pleased to be here. Thanks for having me in your community.
Thanks. So the big thing that we're talking about today is equal parenting. And what I loved about your message is that it's not just 50-50. It's not I do the dishes and he mops the floor. It's kind of like a loose interpretation where everyone plays to their own strengths, and in the end it feels equal, even if it's not tick for tick down the line equal in each respect.
Yeah, I like how you said it. At the end, it feels like it's equal. And that can be very different from one household to another. And it doesn't really matter, right? As long as you feel fulfilled and hopefully your partner does the same, then to me, you've reached equal parenting. And I think that that's the success for having a pleasant family and somewhere where people are both kind of like having their goals and their dreams and, being respected and supported in achieving them.
Right, respect and support. And so that's going to look different from one family to the other, as you mentioned. So we can't
Yeah.
look at each other's marriages and each other's family dynamic and make judgments on that because we don't know what's happening behind the scenes.
No, exactly. And someone who has like a marriage where it seems like it's 50-50 with maybe like the tick box could be very like unhappy versus someone who you might be like, whoa, okay, she's pulling more of the weight than he is. And then really maybe that's what fits really well for them in their reality and they might be very happy. So yeah, the comparison and the judgment game, it's so dangerous and it's never worth it, right? We're just always trying to remind ourselves that just look at your own marriage, your own family, and then work on that rather than comparing.
Right. And it's so difficult to compare these days because we see pictures on Facebook and Instagram,
Yeah.
and it's really like the highlight reels of someone
Yeah,
else's life. And occasionally
exactly.
they may throw a blooper in there, but there are way more bloopers going on than anyone's
It's
showing.
only bloopers. Yeah,
Life of bloopers. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So it seems to me that how you would start trying to go for equal parenting would be with a lot of intense communication. I mean, at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
Obviously,
what
I'm not a therapist, but that's what I thought worked really well for us and with clients that I work with is that's it. Kind of like being really open communication with as much love and respect as possible to kind of like just share how you're feeling and also welcome how your partner is feeling, right? And like
Right.
when you put kids in the mix and different life stages and transition, that's also kind of another moment where you kind of reassess what equal parenting might be looking like. And I think, yeah, communication is key at the beginning and then throughout, obviously, to kind of just go with the flow and reassess and change to kind of maintain that as you go and grow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I realize, let's backtrack a second. You said you're not a therapist, but you do have some awesome credentials. So
Yeah.
let's talk about who you
Sure.
are.
Yeah, so I'm a registered dietitian and then I've completed my PhD very recently and I work with new parents and we try in our business, which is with my partner, my husband, who's also in training to become a dietitian. He has his PhD in nutritional sciences to really include the dads, but not just as kind of a passive passenger or, someone who's nodding in the corner and being like, really, like, I don't have anything to do in this, really actively so that the family together can either address any health concern or just kind of establish their family dynamic feeding strategy and then ensure a baby grows. That's primarily who we work with. Yeah.
Right. And being someone who also works with the feeding dynamic, it's amazing how it bleeds over into other areas. You're probably familiar with Natalia Stasenko of Feeding Bites, and she just posted either late last night or this morning. You know, the time change is difficult to London, but
Yeah.
she posted about that on Instagram and about how the feeding relationship is so indicative of what else is going on in your
That's so true.
family.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Not only kids pick up on any kind of like, tension or feelings that parents have when you're stressed, you can see it happening in your kids. They start to act up and, like, it's because I'm stressed. But also the opposite, right? If you are having trouble feeding or being on the same page with feeding kids, it's 3 times a day. It's going to impact your marriage and vice versa. So it can really become the center of your family for good or bad. So it's really centered. Yeah.
Right. And so our perspective as those who work with the feeding dynamic is to kind of get the psychology out of it a little bit more and to create a pleasant environment by focusing on the food. And of
Yeah.
course, you take that another step, saying that if you can create peace through a happy dynamic in other areas in the family, then things will even out in lots of different areas.
Yeah, I think so. And I know you're really like big on that's it, like pleasant meal time. And it
Yes,
starts before we sit at the table, right? And
it
specifically if the
does.
parents are not aligning, these discussion needs to not happen in the middle of a tantrum at the table where your kid decides that this is yucky and that's not the time. It has to happen
Right.
before you sit and before you kind of like approach that. So it's something that maybe parents sometimes like approach when they have like this kind of first dynamic or like problem at the table and they're like, "Ooh, we're not on the same page here." Because it's hard to kind of like, obviously being parents is hard, but to always kind of like know what's next and what we should be discussing so that we feel good about the next step and how it's going to look like. So sometimes it's a bit more reactive, but sometimes it's very proactive, and obviously it would be better to be proactive because then less tantrum, less problems, less challenges, but it's never
Right.
perfect.
So let's use that and skip to my last question when we haven't even hit the second one. But so sometimes parents have different ideas on how their kids should be raised, and sometimes those ideas don't work together, and you need to come up with something in between. And sometimes you can have one parent parenting one way and another parent parenting another way. So what's your you have any advice based on that?
Yeah, and I think for most parents and most families, this is true, right? This they will never be perfectly aligned. So it's not like you chose a wrong partner. I think it's just what it is. We're very different people in life, and that's different values, different things we give importance to. And I like to work with my clients to decide what are kind of their most like important values or things that they are really, really passionate about. And then what is maybe less important. That sure would be ideal if I was alone, I would do this way, but it's not as a priority. So that we can narrow down maybe like two, three things for each of the partners that they're really keen and really like strongly attached, and then see how we can merge those. And obviously, ideally, again, you wouldn't have this huge surprise when kids happen or arrive in your family that like, oh, my partner is actually like not the type of parents I thought he would be. But you never know, and we all grow, and we all have to reassess. And again, it goes back to communication and kind of welcoming the other person's opinion and why is that important for them. Can you appreciate where this is coming from? If it's not that important for you, is that difficult for you to kind of like honor that because it's really important for your partner? So that's kind of where I like to help parents kind of navigate and deciding on the really important part so that, when it's at the table and there's a difficult moment, you can kind of like get back to, okay, what is really important? Let's focus on that and then kind of like, agree that it's never going to be perfect. Kids are kids. Parenting is hard, and parenting
Mhm.
with someone can be great, but also challenging. So
Right.
that's kind of what I like to present as the idea for my clients.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And just thinking of something off the top of my head, some like you might hear me and probably Maude say that grazing isn't the greatest way to feed kids, that we
Yeah.
should have scheduled meal times. But if you have a spouse who comes from a country where they had a history of food insecurity, they didn't have access to food, then their child coming up to them asking for a snack outside of the schedule is going to feel different than
Yeah.
it does for you who grew up in a place where food was plenty and it feels natural to stick to a schedule. And so while the experts are saying grazing is bad, it's important to listen to your partner and take
Yeah.
into account that history and how that feels. I
Yeah.
mean, it might not feel good to say no to your child when they're asking for an applesauce when it's an hour before dinner. And these things need to be explored and approached in a respectful way.
Yeah, this is such a great example. I'm glad you brought that up. And it goes back to like, can you appreciate where this is coming from for your partner, right? And this in that case, it's like it's so deep that like you can probably like reflect and be like, okay, well, how much do I really care if my child is grazing? Can we meet somewhere that will or like feels good to me, but also respect my partner's value? And I think that's true with any kind of like rules that we hear, like you have to account for your family and your reality and your values. And it's much more complicated than just like a blank rule that you do or you're doing it wrong. Like, I'm not a fan of that either. So we're definitely
Yeah.
on the same page here.
Oh, I figured. I figured you were going to be on the same page for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we talked about how it's different than a 50-50 balance. And I know
Yeah.
on your Instagram page, you have advocated playing to your strengths. So,
Yeah.
we have a fairly still normal dynamic from, leftover from the 50s where the husband goes to work and the mom is at home. And if that works out for your family and that's how your family naturally lands in a comfortable and respectful place, that's fine.
Yeah.
If that's not comfortable, there are other options and you can explore
Yeah.
that. But can you talk more about what it means to play to your strengths in
Yeah. And
finding that dynamic?
yeah, and it's funny because there's when I ask clients that question, like what would you like doing or what are you like naturally kind of like patient at doing with your kids that like your partner might be, and like for my family, like don't ask me to brush the teeth of my toddler. I just can't. Like this for me is like no. But like messy play, messy food, cooking in the kitchen like crazy, like it's like, you need to clean the whole thing. No problem. It's not stressful for me. The opposite for my husband. So why would he be the one trying to include our son in the kitchen and then stress and then it's not pleasant for anyone and then it's like, no, it doesn't make sense, right? For the sake of being 50-50, I don't think so. It just, why would we do this to ourselves? And then just for what? To demonstrate that we can do the same things and be the same? No. So it goes back to like, what do you like? What do you naturally enjoy doing? What is maybe more coming more naturally to you when you are with the kids or any other sphere of your life in your marriage? And then the same for your partner. And then perhaps that becomes what you are in charge in the household. And again, I'm not counting, oh, I do 12 tasks and he's doing two. It's more like, well, I enjoy doing this. It gives me fulfillment. I love cooking in the kitchen with my son. I don't care about the mess. I'm feeling pretty good. My husband hopefully does the same. If not, we kind of reassess. But that's how I like to kind of approach it. And really, then it doesn't feel like a task to do, at least not for all and every single items that is on my
Right.
list per se.
Right. And I love how you brought up reassessing because anytime you work with a family dynamic, you're going to have to take a step back every so often and reassess, decide, is this working? Do we both
Yeah.
feel supported?
Exactly. And it's not just when you change partner, which like is an extreme case, right? It might be just like a new chapter in your life if like your kid is suddenly going to school or if you change job or anything that can happen. It's a good time to reassess and be like, yeah, like this I used to like it and it's not bringing me joy, or now it's really challenging to do this for me.
Yeah.
I think I would need support, and then hopefully kind of getting back this conversation going,
Right.
asking for external help or just switching kind of task of who does what, and kind of
Mhm.
getting back to somewhere that you feel both fulfilled and valued. Yeah.
Yeah. And the idea of the love languages, I'm sure you've talked about that or you've heard about it. I love the idea of that book, The Five Love Languages, because it kind of highlights that different people relate in different ways. And so like my husband's love language is acts of service. I have like five different love languages, all of them. I can do all of them, but he's acts of services, which tells me that that's what I do to make him feel valued. I pack his
Yeah.
lunch at night so that in the morning he can
Yeah.
take it, and that makes him feel loved more
Yeah.
so than me giving him flowers or whatever. And then also if he wants to communicate that same message to me, he's probably going to default to acts of service even if I would prefer quality
Yeah.
time. And people have different strengths and different ways to
Yeah.
communicate.
And it's so true. And that's where, again, back to the communication, right? Like kind of voicing that can
Mm-hmm.
really help your partner in like making sure that you feel like valued, like loved, really, right? And that he can support you in the best way. Because maybe he's like thinking that you do love flowers and this and that. And actually you're like, no, I would much rather this. Or, here is where like I don't like, or I feel stressed, or this is really like weighing me down. Can you please like help me on this? Or can we address that, find whatever solution we want? And then
Yeah.
suddenly you're like, wow, we're a team. This feels good. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
whatever that looks like for you, whatever that team looks like for you, but that's kind of where we're aiming, right? It's like you and your partner are a team and then you're working together towards a goal. raising your
Right.
family, feeding your kids, whatever it is.
Right. So a good example of that that's away from the table and personal example, my husband's in charge of the finances. I used to be. It didn't work out well. We reassessed. Now he's in charge of the finances and things are better off. But it was driving him crazy when I would use the debit card because it was unpredictable and he didn't know when there was going to be a charge. So he couldn't
Yeah.
plan for it. So we talked about it.
Yeah.
And so we came up with a certain amount per week. And if I need more, we communicate, and that's fine. But it's more predictable, which makes him
Yeah.
feel better. And I have enough to spend on groceries or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it makes me feel better. But that was communication, reassessing,
Yeah.
and getting to a place where we both felt supported.
And like, this is also a great example because the solution wasn't really like huge, right?
Right.
Communication. Okay, this amount, perfect. Yeah, I'm on it. Makes sense. I understand why it's important for you. Realistic with what I want to do with that money, whatever I want to spend. So it doesn't need to be like always like huge, like expensive or complicated solution. Half
Mm-hmm.
of it is feeling heard, feeling like you can say it and someone is actually listening to you without judgment. And then it's figuring a solution, which most of the time is not even that hard to apply. And then, wow, feels so good.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that did feel good. Coming to a reasonable solution it was empowering on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about what is the father's role? Let's say you have the traditional dynamic of the father going to work, the mother stay at home, and
Yeah.
this dynamic, it may be very common still, but there are points of strife that can come up. When
Mm-hmm.
the mother's momming all the time, and the
Yeah.
father comes home and only sees the kids for a short amount of time and then on weekends, and he might feel undermined, and the woman
Yeah.
who's at home with the kids might feel undervalued. So
Yeah.
so how do
It's
you
such
get
a
to a place where both people feel supported in a situation like that?
Yeah, it's complicated, right? Because again, like it can end up being very different from for different families, but I think that the first I don't know if it's the first thing to do, but it's the mom needs to almost like kind of like erase herself a bit, calm down that mummying all the time because the father needs room to be a father, not to be a mother, to be a father. And that's going
Yes.
to be very different than how we feed and how we clean and how we manage the household. But that's not the goal again, right? We don't want to replicate in a little like version of ourselves. We want a father who fathers and the way he wants so that we can be like, okay, we're a team again, back to the team idea. So I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the most challenging first step is for the mom to be like, okay, at the table, I'm not going to interfere. Or, he's in charge of whatever. Again, goes back to the communication. Maybe the first step is like, he's going to cook dinner or whatever fits for you and would be helpful and achievable for your family. And then the mom needs to kind of just take a deep breath and then refrain from commenting or imposing her way so that the father will learn to be a father and to do it his way, which is perfectly fine. And
Mm-hmm.
if we have kind of our rules or our values as a family of what's important, then naturally we'll get to this and we will be a team promoting these values. But it's a learned skills, right? Just like being a
Right.
mother, you're born a mother when you deliver a child or you adopt one, but you're learning and readjusting and reflecting on like, oh, this didn't go too well, or this here was not my best version. What can I do to change? And I think we should trust father to do the same. There's no reason they're not able to do it well. So
Right. And there are all articles, a lot of information out there about how parents give different types of affection and give
yeah.
information in different types of ways. So we
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't just assume that our way is best. We should
No.
we should maybe consider that it's the balance between two different forms of communication and two different kinds of affection that really give our kids the most benefit.
Yeah.
And so no matter what kind of marriage you have, genders, gender roles, traditional, non-traditional, whatever you
Mm-hmm.
have going on, you became a partner with that other person for a reason,
Yeah.
and you're not parenting by yourself for a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you are parenting by yourself on purpose, which
Yeah.
also all the support in the world.
Yeah.
But if you're parenting with another person, you should honor your strengths and honor their strengths. And if there is a disagreement, don't have it in front of the kids
Yeah.
during that moment. Most things can be addressed later on.
Yeah. And sometimes it's easier to almost think about this as, okay, they are my kids. I love them. What do I want for them? I want them to have a father that's present, that's involved, that is taking the time to be with them. And then sometimes it's easier to kind of address or approach a situation with that in mind versus like, well, me, I'm the mom, I'm doing this, you should be doing that. And then like it's kind of like more of a conflict versus like, what do I want for my kids? And I
Right.
don't ever hear a parent say like, I don't want the best for them. Like every parents want the best and they want the father to have a special relationship with their kids. So sometimes it's easier to kind of support that and be like, okay, I'm going to take a step back and let them develop their relationship. And it can be a step back and it can be like, I'm going to leave the house and it's going to be their thing. And I don't need to know about it if that's stressful for me at first. And they're going to survive and they're going to thrive and they're going to enjoy and build memories. So I think
Yeah.
it's great to work towards that because there's a lot of pressure on the mother. And sometimes it's kind of like we're guilty of encouraging that cycle. So giving more space to the father will just encourage that and getting back to kind of a more balanced dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And the reason I had brought up the traditional roles was just because that's where I've been and that's my experience. And
Yeah.
so I don't know what it's like to have two working parents and try to
Mm-hmm.
manage that. I really have so much respect for people who are trying to make that work. It sounds very stressful. Uh, and there are all kinds of different relationships and different dynamics people
Yeah.
have. So the main thing is finding your strength,
Yeah.
communicating, and respecting each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for joining me. How can people find you?
So on Instagram, we're at equal.parenting.nutrition. So we're active on there. Please come and join our community, ask questions. And then our website is www.nutrition, familyandconutrition.com. Sorry.
I'll put the link in the comments anyway,
Yeah,
so people can click on it.
sure.
Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, but thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to
Well,
discuss.
thank you for coming. I just try with these nap time nutrition segments to make everyone's life just a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And so, any topic comments from you, Maude, or from any of our viewers today, I am very open to hearing other comments and topic suggestions, any questions you have. And um, thanks for joining us. If you're local to the Phoenix area, come visit me at Toddler Test Kitchen, toddlertestkitchen.net for all the dates and registration links. And it's been a blast teaching at Bertuccio Farms and the Farm South Mountain. All those kids having fun with their child-safe knives, and it's been a great time. So thank you again. I'll push the button and end the segment. And if anyone wants to reach Maude, you can see she's fantastic, and
Thank you.
the contact information will be in the comment section.
Yeah.
Thank you, and see you next week.
Bye.